What's up, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Jimmy Boy Hour with your host, Omarcomin, the biggest Jimmy Boy there is. Today we've got a game, UB game against another NA player, HJFudge, decent player, Undead Dynasties, and Warriors of the Dark Gods player, and pretty decent guy, a lot of fun to play with, so we'll dive into it here with the lists. A little bit of cock up getting this game started because I refuse to play flank attack because I think it's retarded deployment. So we argued for a moment or two, and then he acquiesced, and we ended up with the battle line. Here I think he rolled up his spells, and we're about ready to get going. He's got a interesting list. I guess this is one of the flavor of the month Undead Dynasties lists. 2 Battle Sphinx, 2 Catapults, Casket, 2 units of 3 Chariots, some Chaff, Archer Bunker, and then the Necro Guard unit with Evocation spells, I think. So he's got a Harbinger, or the Hatred character that gives Hatred in the Necro Guard unit. I think they call it the Necro Star build. I don't know, I didn't think it was particularly good, but I don't want to ruin anything for you just yet, so I think we rolled off and Fudge got first. No, he chose sides and I let him deploy first, and he went ahead and dropped everything. And I think we'll see that in just a second. So he's beginning to deploy in that bottom right hand quadrant. Now, he's got some specific units that I have specific counters for, and I wanted to make sure that I would get good deployments against those things, so I'm fine to give him first turn. Obviously, when you're playing a Vanguard list, you prefer to be able to Vanguard, get right in front of what you want to be against, and then fight it out on their turn 1, but it doesn't really matter. So he's deployed in that bottom right hand corner, and pretty good bans here. I asked if he added any Vanguarded units, and he tells me that all of his units are special. Will prove not to be the case, but let's dive in here. So here he's deployed. I counter deploy. I get my Spear unit across from a unit of Chariots. I get my Seekers across from one, if not both, of his Sphinx, and then my King with the Rune of Smashing, S10 versus T5 or better, and D3 wounds across from at least one Sphinx, and both of them can probably tank that Necro Guard unit with ease. Follow up with my Vanguard, so I shove up so that all, if not most, of my units can offer a supporting charge to the others. He does find the one weakness, but it's not an enormous weakness, and he will end up charging that unit of Deep Watch with the King in it, which is probably my sturdiest unit, probably the sturdiest unit in the game, actually. So here you see his charges turn 1. He comes out with the 1 Sphinx and the Chariots into the Spears, and I'm chomping at the bit for that because obviously the Spears have lethal strike against Chariots and horses and that kind of jazz, and then he charges the Necro Guard into the Deep Watch, and I'm not expecting that to go super well for him as well because I have the Grudge applied. So combat ends, and I think I completely fluffed my dice with the Spears, and I only managed 1 wound, but that unit is steadfast. On the other side, I challenged, and he accepted with his General, and 8 my champion, and another 5 Deep Watch, so everything just kind of stays as it is for the moment. Now my turn, I charge with my Seekers, move everything up, kind of jostle everything around. Seeker charge into the side of that Necro Guard unit was pretty devastating, but he challenged me, and I accepted with my Demon Seeker, and made a mistake here. I always think that the multi-wound 2 applies to infantry, and it doesn't. It only applies to monstrous things. So that challenge went on for another round, unfortunately, and that meant that the Deep Watch couldn't hit, and the Sphinx could come in and offer a supporting charge and basically eat a bunch of naked orange-haired men. Ultimately, we lost that challenge, and then, of course, the Deep Watch unit was sitting there for yet another turn. Heroes of the day probably are those spearmen facing off against that Battle Sphinx. They do end up killing the Chariot unit with lethal strikes. At this point, it looks like my miners have arrived, so this is the end of turn 2 at least, because they've already fired and done 4 wounds on each chariot, or on each catapult. And this looks like his turn 3. He moves to chaff my miners, tries to chaff up the Deep Watch, has finally killed the last of the Seekers, and looks poised to kill the Spears. And I think what ends up happening is very little here. He does some shooting, not much else happens. Yeah, so I end up killing the catapult, killing the horses, moving everything around, and here's where things really go bad for him. In an attempt to, I guess, save his mage, he moves him out of his bunker and promptly miscasts. I don't think he's done it just yet, but promptly miscasts with 5 power dice. And I let him take it, and he ends up doing 3 wounds to his caster, which then causes his entire army to crumble. But at this point, I think I was in a pretty good position. A couple strange things happened that I didn't really expect. Like, I think I had 4 spearmen left facing off against that Sphinx, and they ended up pushing combat by doing a wound or 2 for an extra round. And I had overrun with my Deep Watch, thinking that he would turn and run into the back of them, but it was all for naught in the end, and everything worked out. Overall, I think that, you know, the Sphinx and the Undead Dynasties are a pretty tough matchup for Dwarven Holds, just based on my list more than anything, and the high toughness creatures that they can put on the table. Toughness 6 is very difficult for infantry to deal with, because there's really no way to punch through it without characters or seekers, and if he really wants to avoid me, he can. If he had denied me combat in that first round, I think he would have had a better chance with maneuvering and getting around my units, just because of the weakness of movement 3. I sort of had him cornered, but you never really know. With those fear catapults and with casket, it's very easy to cause a panic check. But overall, I think it was a really good game. I think I played pretty well, with the exception of a couple pretty bad misplays. I should have charged the Seeker unit into the side of the Sphinx in my turn 1, rather than into the side of the Necroguard. But hey, it all worked out. And until next time, stay Jimmy, boys. I'm Omarcomin. Later.